Having a safe, effective, and reliable and credible nuclear deterrent is the cornerstone of our national defense. Currently, each leg of our nuclear triad is undergoing a generational recapitalization to better align with the projected threat. The Department of the Air Force is responsible for 2 of the 3 legs, the land-based ICBMs and our bomber fleet. Dr. Meink, in your answers to the committee's advanced policy questions, you stated that, quote, the ground leg of the nuclear triad, Minuteman III, and over time Sentinel, are foundational to strategic deterrence and defense of the homeland, unquote. I agree with that. I also believe that we have an opportunity following the analysis done during the Nunn-McCurdy breach to incorporate lessons learned and build a stronger, more enduring Sentinel program than was originally proposed. Dr. Meink, if confirmed, will you commit to utilizing all available tools to accelerate Sentinel emplacement and ensure that our nation's ICBM capability does move forward?
Thank you, Senator. If confirmed, I will do so, and I do appreciate the one-on-one conversation we had on this topic. I'm looking forward to diving into the results of the Nunn-McCurdy and then also obviously working the B-21 and the other activities from a nuclear perspective the Department supports.
Thank you. Mr. Duffy, if confirmed as Undersecretary of Acquisition and Sustainment, you will oversee all nuclear modernization efforts and serve as chair of the Nuclear Weapons Council. Can you provide us with a short summary of your views on why we need such a strong nuclear deterrent?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. And yes, I look forward, if confirmed, to assisting and leading the department in the oversight of the nuclear modernization program. Nuclear modernization, as you mentioned, is the backbone of our deterrent, our strategic deterrent, and ensuring that we have a modern, capable nuclear enterprise that not only includes the B-21, which is a successful acquisition program by all accounts, but the Columbia-class submarine and the Sentinel nuclear ICBM are critical. As chair of the Nuclear Weapons Council, I look forward to the partnership with the National Nuclear Security Administration, working with this committee to ensure that we maintain the highest quality systems that not only deliver the weapons, but the nuclear command and control system that would be required for a safe and secure deployment if necessary. And I think it's absolutely critical that we ensure that we have accelerated acquisition of those capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you agree that our triad, along with NC3, the deterrent it provides, truly is the priority of the department and that it underpins all of our strategic planning?
I absolutely agree with that. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you. Dr. Meink, I believe we're finally on a better path when it comes to space programs. And I'm impressed by what our Guardians have achieved over the last several years. But the Space Force is still a young organization, and there are likely still growing pains ahead. I am encouraged that the President nominated someone for this program with deep expertise in the space programs. Mr. Meink, what's your vision for how the Space Force should grow and how it should evolve as a service?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Yes, I've been fortunate enough to work space systems both on the Air Force side, which then became the Space Force side, as well as from the IC side. Space is critical. This is actually one of the areas that we're most challenged, I believe, from the rapidly evolving threat from China and others, both the direct threat to our systems as well as the threat those systems pose to our operations across the department in general. I think the key to both acquisition and operations is making sure you have the best talented workforce. These are some of the most complicated systems, and if the U.S. is going to maintain our advantage, which we need to do in space, we need to make sure we have the right workforce. The Space Force is in the process of growing. I will support that activity to make sure we have the right numbers and the right skill set, and then make sure that the acquisitions themselves are delivering and that they're getting into operation.
Can you give me a quick example of what new capabilities you think Space Force should be focusing on to acquire? Just a quick example.
I think
I provide that assurance. If I am confirmed, I would follow the law.
Thank you very much. Dr. Meink, as you know, launch operations at Cape Canaveral Space Force Base have become highly constrained due to the new class of ultra-heavy lift rockets and the amount of standoff distance that they require. If confirmed, will you review what options are available to alleviate this constraint, which is hindering competition in this particular area, and report back as quickly as possible to the committee? I think one of the great achievements of the last few years is the privatization of space launches, and the competitive model is a good one. We'd like to see that maintained.
Senator, I'd be happy to. That is something in my current job we work and are concerned about. One of the phrases I like to say sometimes is, this is kind of a good problem to have. Historically, we had a very limited access to space launch. That has grown across many, many companies in the U.S., but that has also led to some challenges, as you just articulated. It's getting very busy, very crowded, and some of these larger launch vehicles do drive different concerns than maybe we had to address in the past. So yes, Senator, I think it's that capability is extremely important for us to maintain our advantage in space. I think to some degree, what we're doing across the board in launch gives the U.S. an asymmetric advantage. But we do need to make sure that we have the proper launch infrastructure, the proper space really to continue operations and allow that both national security and commercial industry to grow.
And you'll get back to us as quickly as possible with
yes, Senator, I will.
More. Thank you, sir. Mr. Michael, one of the key advantages we have in our industrial base is our technical workforce within the military, including our acquisition professionals, our test and evaluation community, our STEM personnel, our laboratories. They're vital. In fact, I think we'll find that that is going to be the pathway to more efficiency and more productivity as we enhance this workforce. But we're now in a situation where many of these individuals are being dismissed without any cause. They're being encouraged to leave, and many of them have the skills to walk out the door and get a lot more money in the private sector. What can and will you do to reverse this trend, to build up our workforce rather than to haphazardly dismiss it?
So, Ranking Member Reed, I think that we all agree that technological innovation is the way forward for the Defense Department in almost every dimension. And we have some storied labs like DARPA and other places that ought to be fortified as opposed to degraded in any way. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is ensuring that it remains an honored profession, because people join these labs and these affiliated scientific organizations with the DoD because they care about the mission. And we have to honor that. And I think we can attract more people and retain people if we celebrate their accomplishments more, and also if we focus them on missions that are going to be important and realized. And that's why I mentioned, I think, focusing them on those missions and honoring their successes will attract and retain more of them. And I've done that in the private industry for decades, really focusing on getting engineers, keeping them, rewarding them to produce great things. And that's what I intend to do in this role if confirmed.
Well, that's encouraging. Again, though, you're looking at a situation now where people have been dismissed not based on their talents, but they are in a probationary status and they can be dismissed. And I hope you can reverse that, again, policy. Thank you. And my time is expiring. Mr. Bass, I'll have a question for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reed. Senator Cotton, you are recognized.
Thank you. Dr. Meink, I want to return to Senator Fisher's line of questioning about nuclear modernization. The Air Force is responsible for 2 of the 3 legs of the nuclear triad, as she said. Sometimes the funding for that, which is known as the pass-through, counts against, you might say, the top line for the Air Force in internal budget battles. I personally worry the Air Force can't execute all of its tasks when it comes to its traditional conventional tasks while also executing nuclear modernization of our missiles and our long-range bombers. Do you agree that we need to take a new look at the top line for the Air Force, and especially to account for that nuclear pass-through to ensure the Air Force has the budget necessary to perform all of its vital tasks?
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question, and thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit offline. The Air Force is kind of in a unique position almost in its history. We're in the process of modernizing pretty much across all the 5 core mission areas. The nuclear triad, nuclear deterrence is a huge part of that. As you just kind of mentioned, those systems are pretty expensive. One of the first things I plan to do is take a holistic look at all of the modernization and all the readiness bills that we have coming, and then I will put together and advocate for what resources I think are necessary to execute all of those missions, and then working both within administration and with Congress, which I've found throughout my time working national security, a good relationship with Congress is critical. So if confirmed, I'll be back here walking through what I think we need to do.
Thank you. And I'm sure in the internal budget battles, you remind everyone, it's not just my top line. I've got this big slug of nuclear modernization here as well.
Yes, Senator, there's a couple slugs in there
Okay, thank you. Another thing that worries me is retaining our troops, especially in the Air Force, retaining fighter pilots. We're nearly 1,800 pilots short, I believe, these days. For every 4 jobs requiring a fighter pilot, we just filled 3 of them. I have my thoughts on some of the factors driving this, in part due to some roundtables that Senator King and I have held over the years with pilots. For instance, I think we can always probably do a little bit better job of paying our pilots, but I don't think you're ever going to pay them enough compared to what commercial airlines will pay them or private companies. People join the Air Force to fly fighter pilots because they want to fly high-performance jets in defense of our nation, and we need to do a better job of getting them more time in the cockpit training here and downrange. I think it's one big factor. There are other factors as well, but could you give me your thoughts on that, and also just a commitment that you're going to look carefully at that?
Yeah, I'll commit. I'm going to look carefully at that. And Senator, I think your discussion about, I see that as kind of a quality of service, quality of life, pay, that only goes so far. We need to make sure, not just with pilots, but across our highly skilled areas within our workforce, that they have the opportunity to do what they've been trained, what they love to do. I think that could be a bigger impact on maintaining some of these highly technical skill sets like pilots and others, letting them do what they were trained to do. I've been around since I was a navigator. We've always struggled with maintaining pilot levels. It is much larger than just the funding. And Senator, not to necessarily ask something of you, but if you have other opinions, if I'm confirmed, I'd love to sit down and talk to you about it.
And thank you. Just one more question for you, Dr. Meink. Ebbing Air National Guard Base in Fort Smith is now the home of the International Fighter Training Mission for the F-35. It's going to grow from 4 aircraft today to 48 fighter aircraft in the next 3 years. That's twice as fast as the normal bed down for standard F-35 mission. The Air Force has worked well with our state and local partners and Senator Bozeman's office, Congressman Womack's office, and mine. Can I get your commitment that we'll continue to work well as we go through this very fast, but so far very successful bed down to ensure that Ebbing has the resources it needs?
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay. Mr. Bass, first off, I want to apologize that I missed our meeting yesterday. I hate to stand up a wonder boy from Arkansas Tech University, right across the river from Dardanelle, Arkansas, but glad to see you today, and congratulations on your nomination. I continue to hear that the MHS Genesis program is causing problems for recruiting and converting recruits into new troopers, not just airmen, but soldiers, sailors, Marines, and so forth. Obviously, we want to work efficiently with medical records, and we don't want to bring in people who are going to be washed out because of serious medical conditions 6 months after basic training. But we've discovered a lot of things. I think in past days, let's just be honest, your recruiter would have told you to lie about at MEPS when you went there. You know, that you had a broken arm when you played junior high football and then went on to play 4 more years of senior high football, and it gets recorded now, and you have to go through a bunch of rigmarole. In the meantime, you get a better job doing something else. Can you take a look at how Genesis is operating to make sure that we catch the serious problems we need to without deterring and delaying young men and women who are eager to sign up and serve in our military?
Thank you, Senator. Go Razorbacks. And I will commit to taking a look at the accession standards. You know, a good problem to have is that we have too much information in our medical health record. You know, we'll take that, but we also need to take a look at our accession policies, and I commit to working that and working with your office.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator Shaheen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations to each of our nominees and your families. Welcome this morning. Thank you for your willingness to continue to serve the country. Mr. Bass, I want to follow up on a concern that I have based on your record at the CIA. I've been very concerned about directed energy attacks on our service members, our diplomats, and our intelligence community abroad. I have personally interviewed and worked with a number of those victims over the years from the time of the first attacks in China and Cuba. The Department of Defense has been offering critical care at Walter Reed for the victims across the interagency. However, many in the intelligence community, I think, are doing a disservice to these victims by continuing to deny that this is a real issue and to fail to look for attribution for who's responsible. Now, I understand that there are reports from your time at the CIA that suggest you didn't take seriously the reports of those anomalous health incidents. Can you speak to why you were skeptical and what your position would be if you were confirmed for this new role?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your commitment to this effort. I reject the premise that I did not take AHI seriously. All individuals that are affected by AHI, regardless, should be treated with dignity and respect, and they should be afforded health care. The issue that we had to resolve was these individuals wanted to go to Walter Reed. We needed to really streamline the process for getting secretary designee, because at that time, the processes and the policies were not in place to get them to the NICO. I think we were using NIH at the time. So we pulled together all the subject matter experts. My understanding now is that DOD has significantly expedited that process, and these individuals, not just at the agency, ma'am, it was at all the federal agencies. We wanted to make sure these individuals got the health care that they deserve, regardless of source. Whether we knew what the source was or not, they should have gotten health care, and we worked to do that. And I think given time, we did get those individuals into the health care they deserve.
So do you commit that if confirmed, the Defense Health Agency will continue to play a critical role in care and treatment for those who have been victims of AHIs?
Senator, 100%. I commit to that.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the other three of you who, I'm sorry I missed the opening statements that everybody provided, but And the questions that I've heard, you've all talked about the need for additional resources at the department level. And how do you square that with the current commitment of this administration and Secretary Hegseth to reduce funding for the Department of Defense by 8% a year over the next 5 years? Mr. Duffy?
Senator, thank you for the question. I believe that the media reporting on that is inaccurate. I do not believe that it's Secretary's intent to cut the budget 8%, but rather he directed the services to relook at a budget that had been prepared by the prior administration with a focus on 8% of the resources of that prior budget and reallocate that towards this administration's priorities.
So would you agree that if you, or can you tell this committee that if you disagree with the directive for the Secretary of Defense or the administration about what they tell you should do with our nuclear program, that if you think it's incorrect and that it will affect the ability of that program to operate successfully in the future, that you would say that to them and share that, stand up to those people directing you to do something that you think you should not be doing?
Well, Senator, I would take my responsibility seriously to advocate for the resources that I believe are required to resource our forces with the capabilities they need in order to prevail in conflict.
Thank you. Dr. Meink, on the resource question.
Absolutely, Senator. I will always advocate for the resources. I think I need to meet the requirements that I've been given, and I've had a bit of a history of doing that. I will continue to do that, Senator.
And Mr. Michael.
Senator Sheen, of course, I think the first thing a new leader does when they come into an organization is look at what their mission is and what do they have the resources to accomplish it or not. And every new administration gets their own agenda, and so that'd be one of the first order of business when you get into a job like this would be to assess that and make sure that you have the right resources.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Shaheen. Senator Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that last point, I think what you're going to find out is you don't have enough resources, but that's just my prejudgment. I think it's great, Dr. Meink, that you're surrounded by the research and development guy and the acquisition guy, and you're all talking about modernization. And that's what I want to talk about. But first I want to know, in Lemon, South Dakota, as close to North Dakota as you can possibly be, to quote my colleague from South Dakota, was your area code 605 or 701? Because Lemon is known to have both.
Yeah. It's not just close. Actually, part of the town is in North Dakota.
It is.
I was 605, Senator.
All right. That's fine. Okay. So, Dr. Meink, it gets harder from there. I'm told that the Air Force is considering, back to my technological advancement, is considering canceling solicitations for this transport layer on SDA's Tranche 2 and 3, and instead using Starshield, which is, of course, an existing SpaceX capability. One of the purposes, specific purposes of SDA, as per the founding document, is to, quote, expand our space warfighting capability and foster growth in the U.S. space industrial base, unquote. But I'm told that cutting these bids for these transport layers means maybe 8 or more small, mid-sized companies would not be allowed to bid. Is this a good idea? I mean, do you think cutting opportunities like this could hurt the innovators in the industrial base and the potential going forward?
Senator, thanks for the question. One of the things that I pushed for, particularly over the last 10 years, is expand competition and expand the industry base. That ends up almost always with the best result, both from a capability and cost to the government. I'm not familiar with those discussions going on within the Pentagon. If confirmed, I look forward to diving into that and assessing where they're going and what they're recommending. But I've not seen those recommendations at this point. Well,
I look forward to that. I look forward to digging into that and finding out the answers, and hopefully changing course if that is in fact the case. Going on with SDA, the founding document, which was written in March of 2019, said, quote, We cannot match the pace our adversaries are setting if we remain bound by legacy methods and culture. I've been told so many times by people seeking and that have positions like you're all seeking that that's their commitment to, and I've yet to really see anybody put that to practice. So you were a member of NRO at the time, I believe, and we're probably part of that culture. Why do you think the statement was needed in 2019, and do you think the statement is relevant today, and if not, why?
So, Senator, I think that sort of thinking is always required, right? We always have to look at how we're operating, how we're executing as technology changes, as different threats change. We have to be flexible and adaptable enough. We have made, I believe, significant improvements in how we are acquiring systems. I would argue that at that point in time, there were probably no programs that were moving faster than the Chinese. That is not the case now. Yeah. But we still have a long way to go, Senator, and I think you pointed a couple of those out.
Thank you for that. I think while I have time, I'm going to switch over to you, Mr. Bass, and talk about something that's really near and dear to my heart, coming from a rural state, very rural area with some really important bases in our country, in our world, and certainly to me. I championed some legislation in the NDAA, the 2025 NDAA, about rural health care and access specifically to mental health services. But I was told that the Defense Health Agency was against it. So the committee staff wouldn't put it in the bill. Without a vote of the members, I brought the amendment to the committee. It passed on a voice vote. And here's the point. It has to do with TRICARE reimbursement for health care services that don't meet the singular, very specific accreditation. Not a better accreditation, just an accreditation that's specific, that greatly reduces access to health care, to mental health care. The reason this became important to me is because I know of 2 airmen who sought mental health care at Grand Forks and were denied by TRICARE, who are no longer with us because they ultimately chose to take their own lives. All because of this one accreditation that wasn't. I don't know what would have happened had they been able to get the care that was available to them. But the bill that we passed, that's part of the NDAA, it basically says if access in the state fails to meet standards for more than 12 months consecutive, then we have to look at something different. Now, it's under review. The first part of the bill is a 1-year review. My experience, my experience is far too often that in a year we have to ask somebody where the review is, and then they'll try to get it to us in 4 months. Would you just please commit to the men and women of the military that we'll look into this right away, that a year from the enactment of the law, I don't have to wait 4 more months for the conclusion?
Thank you, Senator. The mental health access for our service members in our total force has to be a priority, and I will commit to working with you on that.
Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kramer. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Duffy, it's appropriate that you and Dr. Meink are sitting together because I think there's such a close correlation between the work that you're doing. Technology wins wars. The side that has the newer technology generally prevails. Genghis Khan in the stirrup, the longbow at the Battle of Agincourt, the tank in World War I, the atomic weapon in World War II. My concern is that we have missed 2 of the major technologies of the 21st century, and this isn't a criticism of the current administration. It goes back probably 10 or 15 years, hypersonics and directed energy. And we've got to catch up. And the budget, the prior administration cut the budget for directed energy in half, which to me just doesn't make sense. We're spending $2 or $3 million per missile to knock those $20,000 drones out in the Red Sea. Directed energy is certainly ought to be an answer, and I know that there's work going on, but it should be accelerated. My request is that you try to think ahead and think about acquiring the next technology, not just what we've always done. My most hated words in the English language is we've never done it that way before. I hope you'll subscribe to a philosophy of trying to look to the future. Your thoughts?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'm thrilled to not only be sitting next to Dr. Meink, but Mr. Michael, who will be at the cutting edge of the next generation of technologies. And I look forward to a partnership with both these gentlemen on how do we advance that technology, how do we leapfrog our adversaries' capabilities there, and then I see my responsibility is how do we accelerate getting that in the hands of the warfighter at a
one way to
reasonable
do
cost.
that is smaller businesses. We've had testimony to this committee by smaller businesses that they've just given up on the Pentagon acquisition process. Too complex, too much red tape, too long. And I just hope that in your administration, you don't turn away from fostering small businesses where a lot of the innovation takes place.
I agree with that, Senator, and I'd like to recognize and appreciate the leadership Chairman Wickers provided in the Forged Act, which I think takes a bold step of proposing the rescission of 285 provisions of law that are no longer relevant. I think that's a great step forward. How do we remove those burdens that we place on business that want to deliver value to the Pentagon?
I appreciate that. Mr. Michael, research, crucial. Same argument that I just made about the importance of new technology. I hope we don't lose touch with our universities, which are huge assets in terms of research, as well as the private sector research capability. Is it your intention to maintain support for research across the board, whether it's private sector, government, or university?
Certainly it is, Senator. It's obvious to me, and I'll give you an example, the AI industry. The private sector is investing hundreds of billions of dollars per year in that, which dwarfs by orders of magnitude the amount we're spending in DoD, and we should be leveraging that in some way. And certainly in the university settings, they're also innovating in quantum computing and lots of other areas that we need to be drawing from and pulling in faster into the DoD and into Mr. Duffy's acquisition programs so that we can get those things in sooner from both of those types of organizations.
Thank you. Mr. Bass, I'm running short of time, but I want to be sure that one of your priorities is brain health. The signature issue from the war on terror has been problems with blast overpressure and brain health long-term effects, and I hope that's something you'll pay significant attention to. There are ongoing studies in the department, but I want to also emphasize that implementation of the results of those studies is important. I hope that you'll commit to me that brain health is something that you'll attend to in this position. I think it's one of the most important maladies affecting our troops.
Thank you, Senator, for your commitment to this issue. DoD is a leader in this space, and I will commit to you that we will continue to look at ways and devote research to this issue and making sure that we continue to make progress.
Thank you. Just in a few seconds, none are so devout as the convert. I was not enthusiastic about the creation of the Space Force under the leadership of Senator Kramer. I now admit I was wrong. And I used AI a few minutes ago to determine that the budget of the Space Force is 3.5% of the total budget of the Defense Department. Given the role of space in any future conflict, Mr. Meink, I think the Space Force, Dr. Meink, I think the Space Force deserves greater resources and greater attention. The first day or two of any future conflict is going to take place in space.
Yes, Senator, I believe that you are correct, that space is going to be one of the determining factors, either from a deterrence perspective, because if it can't be affected, it's going to be a deterrent to the adversary. So we definitely need to get that right. The Space Force budget has been, to my understanding, has been growing significantly since it was founded 5 or so years ago, and I will continue to advocate for the resources. And I think the department in general, given the threatened environment, Indo-PACOM theater is going to play a very important role in both air and space, and I will advocate for the resources to do that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well said by both of you. Thank you, Senator King. Senator Budd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to each and every one of you for your nominations and your willingness to serve. It's much appreciated. Thanks to your families for being here. Dr. Meink, I enjoyed our conversation a couple of weeks ago. You know, the Air Force announced that Seymour Johnson Air Force Base will be one of Air Force's first deployable combat wings, ready for deployment in fiscal year 2027. So what's your understanding and view of the deployable combat wing concept?
So, Senator, thanks for the question, and thanks for our discussion. I apologize we got a little off topic on some of those things, but I appreciate the time. So my understanding is fairly limited with the reorganization and the refocus of how they're going to deploy their wings. But I am aware they're in the process of attempting to transition to that kind of concept. I think it holds promise, and if confirmed, I will. That is one of the areas I'm going to take a look at. And my understanding is that the Secretary will likely ask me to take a look at it if I'm confirmed.
Look forward to working together in that regards. Continuing on, in a January op-ed, General Alvin, he highlighted that the Air Force fleet is the smallest and oldest that it's ever been, citing in part that, and here's a quote, "We are blocked from divesting aircraft and programs ill-suited for today's threat environment," end quote. So, Dr. Meink, in your opinion, is the F-15E Strike Eagle ill-suited for today's threat environment?
So I believe, first off, the F-15's, it's kind of my favorite airplane. F-15 AirCap came to my rescue when I was in a tanker in the first Gulf War and ran off a couple of Iraqi fighters. So I'm probably a little bit conflicted when it comes to the F-15. But is it going to be able to operate in the highest threat environments? No. Does it have value? Yes. I think the question going forward will be, how long do we continue and how do we best utilize the value from the fourth generation fighters? But I think it definitely has value today. Not in all environments, but it definitely has value today, Senator.
Thank you. More broadly, what are your thoughts on General Alvin's comments about the size and age of the Air Force fleet? And is our fleet, particularly our amount of tactical fighters, is it too small?
Senator, the thing I can speak to for sure is that the fleet is aging. The 30-plus years on average. Some of the platforms, some of the critical platforms are significantly older than that. When I was a navigator, I never flew a KC-135 that was younger than me. They're still flying today. In one of the mainline air refueling platforms the department has. So they are definitely getting old. Still a very capable platform, but they're definitely aging. With respect to the exact numbers, Senator, I have not seen, and I'm looking forward to seeing the detailed analysis that went into the projections on NGAD and the other systems. My sense, though, is it's probably too small, both on the fighter and the bomber side of the house.
Thank you for that. Mr. Michael and Mr. Duffy, American deterrence relies on maintaining military technological edge over our adversaries. China's strategy to blunt that edge through espionage, intellectual property theft, and rapid acquisition is a threat that must be addressed. So if confirmed, you both would play a major role in ensuring that America and its allies have the tools needed to prevail in war while ensuring that critical new technology stays out of unfriendly hands. So, Mr. Michael, as we develop and scale new technology, including NGAD, or Next Generation Air Dominance, AI, and quantum, how will you act to ensure that the security of these American innovations and their IP remain in our hands?
That is one of the most important things that I'll have to work on, because if you look at what's happened with the Chinese capabilities with Salt Typhoon and with infiltration into some of the university programs and into our systems, that means that that adversary can catch up without 80% of the cost, because they could innovate on top of our 80% investment. And that's quite a bit of advantage they get. So protecting against their ability to steal our intellectual property, our trade secrets, and us not being reliant on their supply chains are two things that we have to do in combination with one another to ensure that when we're superior, we stay superior.
Thank you. Along those lines, Mr. Duffy, how will you ensure that our acquisition system can keep up with the rate of technology and innovation in the world?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. It is critical that we have a robust defense industrial base that can provide security to protect our intellectual property, but has the robustness to ensure that we're delivering the most cutting-edge capability to our forces. It would be my commitment, if confirmed into the job, to explore those barriers that are preventing new entrants and private capital from entering the defense industrial base, to accelerate the production capacity of our defense industrial base, and to create new innovation to get it in the hands of the warfighter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Budd. And I hope all policymakers, House and Senate, and in the executive branch and private sector are listening to the valuable testimony. Let me just follow up, if I might, Senator Hirono, before I recognize you. Dr. Meink, you said the number of years into the future that the F-15 might be valuable or useful is a matter of is a question. What do you have an opinion about that? Could you follow up on that question that Senator Budd asked?
So, Senator, thanks for the question, and I appreciate the opportunity we had to speak offline. I haven't seen all the detailed results of the analysis that's going on, or that has gone on in support of the NGAD and other decisions. So I don't have the latest information. I would say, though, that the fourth-generation fighters are still, in many environments, going to be effective. I think at some point in time it becomes a cost-benefit analysis as we bring on additional fifth and potentially sixth-generation fighters. So I can't speak to the details, Senator, but I will look into it, and I will be happy to come down and brief the Hill on what I find.
And that's a valuable answer in itself. Thank you very much. And Senator Hirono, you were recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to each of you. As part of my effort to focus on ensuring the fitness of all nominees who come before any of my committees, I asked the following two initial questions, and we'll start with Mr. Duffy and go right down the line. First question, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
Never.
Let's go down the line.
No, sir. No, Senator.
No.
No.
Second question, have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No.
No, Senator.
No.
No.
This is the first hearing of this committee since the security breach involving Signal and involving the attack on Yemen. So I am going to ask each of you yes or no questions. And again, we'll start with Mr. Duffy. Based on your backgrounds, each of you has had a security clearance. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, Senator, I have a clearance.
I didn't hear you say, do I have or have I had?
But have you had? If you
I
either
have,
have or have
historically,
had.
yes.
Yes. So you know
Yes.
what a security clearance is.
Yes, Senator.
Go ahead. And each of you would agree that protecting classified information is important?
Yes.
Yes, Senator.
It's obligatory.
It's what?
Obligatory.
Yes. It's the law. Have any of you discussed classified information on an unclassified device or medium?
No.
No, Senator.
No.
No, Senator.
I'm glad that all of you have answered no, because that's pretty obvious. If you admitted that you did not follow the law, that you will be admitting to committing a federal crime. Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent that the record of this hearing include the March 26 Atlantic article, which includes all of the Signal chat attack plans for the strikes on Yemen, to be included in the record of this hearing.
Is there objection? Without objection, it is so ordered.
I also join those of my colleagues who are calling for an investigation. Sooner the better. I think we need to counter the tendency of this administration to want to sweep everything under the rug whenever things get uncomfortable for them. I have a question for Dr. Meink. Joint basing construct between the Air Force and Navy at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, HICM, has led to extensive infrastructure and military construction delays, including at the HICM Air Force Base or airfield. These delays have impacted the military's readiness in the Indo-Pacific and warfighter quality of life. Will you commit to working with my office to resolve these readiness gaps and quality of life challenges? Dr. Meink.
Senator, I commit to working with you. HICM and the Hawaii are in general critical to operations within the Indo-PACOM theater. So I've had an opportunity to spend and operate out of there in the past. I understand the importance of it, and I will commit to working with you in Congress and with the Navy, the new Secretary of the Navy, to work on those issues.
And of course, I'd like to see a lot more coordination between the Navy and the Air Force on the needs, these construction needs. So I hope that you have some plans on how you will enhance the kind of coordination I'm talking about.
Yes, Senator, as I just mentioned, I think it's going to be critically important that I work closely with the Navy and the Department of the Air Force, of course, to do what we need to do to ensure that the infrastructure in Hawaii can support an Indo-PACOM and Indo-PACOM.
Thank you. I'm running out of time, but the infrastructure needs and the modernization needs of all of our bases are, I think, critical for readiness, national security. So I do have a question relating to a concern about the state of our military bases again, particularly in Hawaii. And that's why I'm introducing a requirement in this year's NDAA for each military service to submit a 30-year infrastructure plan modeled after the Navy's annual 30-year shipbuilding plan, and this will ensure, one hopes, long-term planning, resilience, investments, and the accountability for all services. Would you support, Dr. Meink, a 30-year infrastructure plan for the Department of the Air Force?
Senator, as I always have for my career, I will work to answer and address any language we get from Congress.
I think that we need a longer-term plan, because what happens is when you don't have this kind of a plan, then the money that is supposed to go for these kinds of modernization and improvements gets taken for other purposes. And that is why I think that if we have a long-term plan, that we in Congress will be able to see whether you are comporting with such a plan. So I hope that you will see your way to supporting such a requirement in the NDAA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And members are reminded that suggested legislation should be submitted by Monday night next for inclusion in the NDAA. Thank you, Senator Hirono. And Senator Banks, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Meink, the President has expressed historic confidence in the Air National Guard by nominating General Kane to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. That's never happened before, to have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs come from the National Guard. And I wonder if you could if you could speak to the importance of the Air National Guard and the overall Air Force mission and the priority of the Air National Guard and what that will look like on your watch.
Thank you for the question, Senator, and thank you for the opportunity to speak offline. Yeah, the Air National Guard is critically important. It is a significant portion of the department's capabilities across the board, from tankers to fighter aircraft. It will continue to be an important part of the department, and we need to continue to support and work closely with the states and with Congress to make sure that stays so.
Yeah, on that note, as you know, the Air Force is shrinking. We're not buying enough planes to keep the force at its current size, but that means that the Air Force carries that the Air Force reserves and the National Guard carries a greater priority in the mission. How can we ensure that the Air National Guard is getting its fair share of new fighter aircraft?
So, Senator, one of the things I plan to do, and again, is take a holistic look across all the modernization activities, to understand what we need from a numbers perspective, how fast do we need to build, both to support the active duty and the reserve units. And then I will advocate for whatever that requirement is, or whatever the capability is, and whatever the resources that are needed to meet the requirement, both up to the administration and to Congress.
Well, I appreciate that. I look forward to working with you to make sure that the Air National Guard doesn't get the short end of the stick like it often does. Dr. Meink, your first Air Force assignment was flying KC-135s at Grissom Air Force Base in Indiana. Can you talk about how important the effort is there and why it matters not just to Indiana but to the country and our national defense?
Yeah, so this is probably an area I'm a little bit biased on since I started my career in tankers. But it is just, it has always been critical, both from a strategic nuclear mission as well from a conventional mission. One of the reasons we were pulled off of alert and sent to the Gulf War was because tankers were not only necessary for the strategic mission, but they were just critical for operations that were going on in the Middle East. So yes, the tanker force has been and always will be, and to some degree, I think it's becoming more important given the Indo-PACOM theater where the ranges are even longer than what they are in some of the other theaters. So we need to continue. We need to ensure that the tanker force, both active and reserves, are able to support mission.
Does it surprise you they're still flying the same planes there that they were flying when you were there?
I have to admit a little bit, but to some degree, not to dive too deep, but they'd essentially zero-timed those airplanes when I was active duty when they re-engined them. So it was almost a brand new airplane effectively, but it is still, it's 60-odd years old. That's still pretty old, even if you've done a lot of maintenance on them. So,
well, the Air Force refueling tankers are on average among the oldest aircraft in the fleet, and the Air Force isn't buying enough new tankers to replace the ones that we're retiring. The same goes for Grissom, the place where, as you said, you started your career. Grissom has a more than 2-mile runway, one of the longest in the United States of America. As far as I can tell, the Air Force needs new tankers for Grissom, which otherwise threatens to close down the base, and we would lose that runway, that important asset that we have. How should we be working to fix the Air Force refueler fleet?
Right now, the new tanker is the focus, right? We have to work with both within the government and with the contractor to get that program on track, to get the production rates up and drive the cost down so that we can afford to procure the tanker force that's necessary, both to expand and replace. As even though great airplane, Senator, you're exactly right, it is getting pretty old. We're going to have to replace those. Which means we need to get the new tanker into production, into full production.
Well, I look forward to working with you. Your background is perfect for this job. You have my full support. And to each of the other three with us today, I don't have time to ask questions to, but congratulations. I look forward to working with you too. I yield back.
Senator Banks, in the summer of 1971, I did my field training at Grissom Air Force Base, and my first flight on a KC-135 was during that time at Grissom. So you're bringing back memories. And yes, they, like the Buffs, they've been flying and doing well for a long time. Senator Warren, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Healthcare for our men and women in uniform is critical in peacetime and even more so in wartime. Mr. Bass, if you are confirmed as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs, you're going to be responsible for ensuring nearly 10 million service members and their families receive quality health care, including timely access to medication. I am very concerned about our over-reliance on foreign nations for the very medications that put the health of service members at risk and our national security along with it. DOD spends over $5 billion on prescription drugs each year. It's a lot of money. But in November 2023, the Defense Logistics Agency released a report revealing that the supply chain for a third of all drugs on the FDA's essential medicines list is at very high risk, Why? Because the ingredients from these drugs are sourced from China, or we don't even know where they're sourced from. So, Mr. Bass, do you agree that it is a threat to our readiness and to the potential health of our service members that DoD's pharmaceutical supply chain relies so heavily on China?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you again for meeting with me. I do agree that it is a threat. It is a vulnerability.
So this over-reliance gives our adversaries the power to restrict DoD's access to drugs when we need to be able to treat our men and women in uniform. It also leaves us with much less visibility into the practices of foreign manufacturers, which, by the way, routinely have quality issues that threaten both the efficacy and the safety of these drugs. For these reasons, the DoD report recommends boosting the production of finished drugs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, and other key starting materials so that we are making more of this right here in the United States. Mr. Bass, do you think DoD should work to onshore the critical drugs the military needs, including writing contracts that require manufacturers to onshore these capabilities?
Thank you, Senator. I do. I think that we need to work with our industrial base, our private and public partners, and we need to have rapid response contracts, and we need to make sure that we either onshore or nearshore capabilities.
Good. I'm glad to hear you say this. DoD should prioritize domestic purchasing, but there are some instances where it makes sense for DoD to actually produce the medication itself, like when the DoD is the sole customer for that medication. One example, the adenovirus vaccine, which is critical in preventing serious respiratory illness among service members, particularly service members in basic training. DoD developed the vaccine and licensed it then to private industry. But because the military is basically the only buyer, DoD couldn't find a commercial manufacturer for nearly a decade. DoD eventually had to pay a private manufacturer nearly $100 million just to resume production. And during the years that the private sector refused to manufacture for DoD, there were thousands of cases of adenovirus per month and service members who actually died. So, Mr. Bass, if confirmed, will you commit to expanding DoD's capabilities of producing essential drugs in-house to reduce risk and to secure DoD's medical supply chain?
Thank you, Senator. The health and well-being of all of our military members is a priority. I am not familiar with the report, but I commit to working with you and your staff.
All right. I appreciate that because this is a serious problem. And ultimately, these are investments that will pay off. One expert estimated that DoD would make its money back in 3 years after building its own adenovirus manufacturing facility. This is a longstanding bipartisan concern. I worked with Senator Rubio for years on this, and last year the Senate adopted our language directing DoD to enter into contracts to domestically manufacture drugs and drug components that are currently sourced overseas and that are used exclusively by the military. I want to see us get that in the final version of the NDAA. There's more work to do, and I look forward to working with you on this, Mr. Bass. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And Senator Tuberville is next.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Duffy, I just got back from Huntsville, Alabama last week or so and watched the performance of high-energy lasers. And Senator King had brought that up about spending all these millions knocking down these drones. What's your thoughts on high energy and what you've seen the progress in the last few years? I've seen a lot in the last 4 years myself. Your thoughts?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question and for the great state of Alabama's contribution to the defense industrial base. I agree with Senator King and with you. Directed energy and high energy lasers would provide a tremendous capability when we think through some of the threats that we face, whether it comes to counter UAS systems, and really the threat we face, whether it's from adversaries that, like the Houthis, that are able to inflict low-cost kinetics at us, which require us to expend high-cost weapon systems. I think if we can get the technology where we need to be with directed energy and higher energy lasers, that would provide us with the capability to have very low-cost response to those threats. And in the future of distributed warfare with swarms and that sort of things, I think that'll be critical for us to establish that capability.
Thank you. And the progress we've made has been small private companies, as Senator King was saying. Sometimes they get bought out and they move down the line or can't make it because of funding. But I think they're doing an outstanding job. I'd like to, when you're confirmed, to come down and visit and see this for yourself.
I look forward to it, sir.
Dr. Meink and Dr. Michael, this question for you here on the future of engineering in your departments, both of you. We're going to have a tough time keeping good engineers and people employed because of the private companies taking our good people away out of the military. What's your thoughts and your plan of hopefully keeping the best and the brightest in the military instead of taking the private route? Either one of you? Or both of you?
I'd say it's twofold, Senator Tuberville. First, we have to have some successes that are well promoted inside the science and technology enterprise. If DARPA does something great, we need to get it out of the labs and into production fast, and that gives people motivation to be part of want to be part of one of those organizations. The second thing is we should be working with private industry more. If you take artificial intelligence, there's a lot of money being spent and a lot of research and a lot of dollars. We shouldn't have to duplicate that in every area of the government. We should be leveraging where they're spending more and doing ahead and the things we have to do on the basic research side that's not profitable for private industry. We got to get it out of the labs faster and into production sooner.
Thank you. Dr. Meink?
Thanks for the question, Senator. And just kind of to echo, I think it's not just money. I think it is the opportunity to do advanced research, do advanced engineering that has a mission outcome, right? That what we've found in my current organizations, it's a very highly technical workforce. We've done very well in recruiting and retention, and it goes kind of back to the quality of service I mentioned a little bit earlier, is when you bring in these really skilled, talented people, regardless of what that talent is, you need to have there needs to be an opportunity for them to be successful and to do what they love to do, because it takes a lot of work to get some of these skill sets. I think in many cases that's even more important than just pure funding or pure salary.
Thank you. You know, we talk about machines a lot, but we don't talk about people enough, and people are what's going to get the job done for us. Mr. Bass, it's becoming more and more common for members of our armed services to be referred away from the military treatment facilities to civilian providers. The consequences are enormous to the taxpayer, the cost. We want to take care of our service members. How do we fix this problem?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you again for meeting with me offline. We need to take a look at medical readiness is our priority, and we want to make sure we meet the access to care standards for our military members. And it's a delicate balance between going to the direct care system and the MTFs and then to the private sector. We need to look at and encourage healthcare in the MTFs for both volume and complexity, but when necessary to meet medical readiness standards, we need to also send it out to the community. So we have to look at the delicate balance between the both, and if confirmed, I'll work with the staff to make sure that we're meeting access standards, getting healthcare for our troops, and they're getting world-class care.
And as you and I talked about, you know, cutting costs, we need to involve the 21st century of AI into the things that we do between doctors and hospitals and drug companies and all the things that can cut back costs. They're there. We just don't use them for some reason, but I would hope we would get involved in that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Senator Slotkin.
I yield to Senator Rosen.
And I thank Senator Slotkin because I'm off to Foreign Relations after this, so thank you for yielding your time, and thank you, Chairman Wicker. Thank you to the witnesses for being here, for your families, for your willingness to serve, and Dr. Meink, it's good to see you. Thanks for meeting with me last month. And I want to say thank you to Senator Banks, although he's no longer here, for bringing up the importance of the National Guard, because I could not agree more. And Dr. Meink, as we discuss in Nevada's National Guard's 152nd Airlift Wing in Reno flies the dangerous Modular Airborne Firefighting System, easier to say MAFS. The MAFS mission, it flies it with its legacy C-130Hs. They fly low and slow at max gross weight over wildfires in mountainous terrain. So upgrading to the C-130Js would provide increased power and cargo capacity for flight retardant, which equals increased flight safety and firefighting capability in Nevada and actually throughout the western states, which is their mission. Every year we're plagued by devastating wildfires, and just earlier this year, the 152nd Airlift Wing was activated to fight those fires around Los Angeles. Upgrading to the J's is also critical because during the summer months, C-130Hs fully loaded with fire retardant can't even take off from Reno with a full tank of fuel due to the heat and elevation. This wouldn't be a problem for the C-130Js, though, so it's why no other base candidate has greater operational need. So, Dr. Meink, the FY24 Defense Appropriations procured 8 C-130Js, which await a basing decision by the Secretary of the Air Force. If confirmed, will you ensure that the 152nd Airlift Wing receives those C-130Js? We actually were next on the list so that they can more capably and safely carry out their dangerous firefighting mission throughout the western United States.
So, Senator, thank you for the question and thank you for the time. My Sherpa is actually a C-130J pilot, so I've gotten a lot of indoctrination on the importance of a C-130J. So I promise to work with you, Senator, as soon as I get confirmed and get an opportunity to take a look at the basing laydown. I will work with the committee and with you to make sure that is fully considered in those decisions.
Yeah, location mission served is always really important. I know we also discussed this, and I see some young kids here in the audience. And so airmen stationed at Creech Air Force Base, northwest of Las Vegas, they fly the MQ-9 Reapers, the unmanned aerial system. They struggle to find adequate childcare options because their shift schedules are outside of normal business hours. They actually go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to support those global operations. The DoD's attempts to help provide in-home childcare solutions for service members in regions with exceptionally high demand, they've just not been successful so far. And a lot of it has to do with the red tape and cumbersome requirements, which essentially renders in-home child care reimbursement unavailable for many Nevada families. We would be able to maybe do this within the community if we could cut some of the red tape. We can serve each other. So, Dr. Meink, this is so important for the needs of our families and for our mission as well, as they may be based in Nevada, but they're not flying in Nevada maybe. Can you commit to working with me to make this program work better for our families? It is a quality of life and a quality for our mission, particularly those at Creech. They really work outside those normal business hours.
Yeah, Senator, I commit to work with you. As I mentioned earlier, my wife is a retired Air Force officer. I spent time both active in reserves and civilian, and I understand the challenges, particularly in some of the remote locations. We go to these remote locations for a reason, but it does create challenges.
Yeah.
And red tape, yes, I commit to work with you on streamlining that.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. My last question really quickly is about Nevada Test and Training Range, the crown jewel of the Air Force, Nellis Air Force Base in the Knitter.
What did you say? What?
The Nevada Test and Training Range, the Knitter. I'm sorry, that's what the Air Force calls it. The crown jewel, we are proud to say that, provides the largest air and ground military training space in the lower 48. You can never beat Alaska on that amount of space, sorry. But for the evaluations of weapons systems, tactics development, advanced air combat training without interference from commercial aircraft. So Knitter modernization has been among the Air Force top priorities to ensure that our high-end training keeps pace with current and emerging threats and capabilities. We were able to finally pass NDA modernization FY24. That's the collaboration between the Nevada delegation, the Air Force, Department of Interior, other local stakeholders. Almost 90% of Nevada's land is owned or managed by the federal government in some form or fashion. So there's a lot of pieces and parts. And so we'll take this off the record, but I'm going to ask what your priorities for future investments at the NITR are, and how do we envision the range evolving, but in deference to everybody else who's waiting, and Senator Slotkin, who allowed me to get over to Foreign Services, we'll take that for the record. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Senator Rosen. Senator Slotkin.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Congratulations. I remember coming in front of this panel under Chairman Levin to do a panel confirmation hearing, and I remember being the target of that, and everyone else just sat there very quietly and got no questions. And so for those of you having different experiences today, congratulations.
I think you were in junior high.
I was not in junior high, but I will say I got the full McCain treatment and remember it to this day. So you should be proud and happy that none of you, I think, have received the McCain treatment. A couple of questions for Dr. Meink. In Michigan, we have Selfridge Air Force Base, the only Air National Guard controlled base in the country. We've discussed this, and any good Michigander will constantly bring up our interest in a replacement fighter mission for our A-10s, which are phasing out in FY27. I know that in order to have a better shot of having a fighter mission, we need more airframes. And I just want you to know that there's lots of us on this committee for various reasons who want the Air Force to have more airplanes. But will you please commit to working with us on a replacement mission, a fighter mission, not a refueler, we've got those in coming, but a fighter mission for Selfridge Air Force Base?
Senator, I commit to work with the committee both on making sure we have the right number of platforms and where those platforms are bedded down. Happy.
But the right number is more, right?
Right number.
I mean, no matter what it is, it's more.
Senator,
okay, good.
Yes.
Good. All right. Well, looking forward to working with you, and love to invite you to Selfridge and have you come formally and check out what we have going on. It's an amazing base. So
happy to do so, Senator.
Great. Switching gears, Mr. Duffy, I know you've been sitting in the Secretary of Defense's front office and I believe acting as his Deputy Chief of Staff, so really at his right hand. And you're about to become the head of acquisition for the entire Department of Defense. That's a huge job, hugely sensitive job. We don't want other countries knowing what we're acquiring, and so they can defeat it. The leadership of this committee has sent a very standard letter to the Department of Defense Acting Inspector General asking for an investigation of what has happened with potentially classified information being on the Signal chat. What do you think of this investigation? Will you commit to participating, since you were right there in the right hand of Secretary Hegseth during this moment?
Senator, I was not a part of the chat that's
Sure.
in question. I defer to others on the investigation, and I will continue, as I have in the past, always to communicate through approved channels with sensitive information.
But if the acting inspector general came to you as someone who's been so closely working in the front office of the secretary, you would participate in such an investigation?
I would participate. I would follow department procedure if that included the.
Okay. And are you aware of any other signal communications that has gone on from the front office of the Secretary of Defense, either him or his senior staff, that have involved operationally sensitive information, information about specific weapons platforms, the timing of operations, or anything having to do with senior leader decision-making? Are you aware of any other signal chains that you, your staff, or your boss have been on in the past 90 days?
I'm not aware of signal chats that contain sensitive information, no.
Okay. So you can confirm with a clear yes or no, you have not been on any signal chains that provide operationally sensitive or classified information?
No, I have not.
Okay, great. That makes me feel good. We all know that our main competitor in the acquisition space is China, that they have invested in technology that is purposely meant to undercut our advantages in a fight. So if you can sum up in a bumper sticker what you're going to focus on in the acquisition world in order to shred that gap that we have with them, what is that bumper sticker?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I think two really critical metrics when it comes to measuring the success of our acquisition system. One is speed and second is capacity. I think nobody beats us on performance and capability, but we need to accelerate speed and we need to manage cost. And so I think the best incentive, because our industrial base is absolutely critical to providing this. This is something that they do best. It's one of our most greatest national assets is our economic power and our innovation within our industrial base. And so I think if confirmed in this job, it would be a priority for me to convene leaders of industry to understand what are the barriers that get in the way of business wanting to do business with the defense industrial base, and ensuring that we can benefit from the incentives that competition provides. The more interest we have in the defense industrial base, the more innovation we'll get, and I think the more there will be effective incentives to provide capability at cost and at speed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
A key matter that needs attention. Thank you very much for the question and the answer. Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I've said this earlier today. I've been asked more questions about Signal in the last 2 days by these journalists who didn't seem to care at all that we had a commander-in-chief who couldn't put 2 sentences together for 4 years. So forgive me if I'm not being caught up in this faux outrage that is being demonstrated by my Democrat colleagues about a Signal chat that didn't have war plans. It occurs to me that this is more to do about the election loss and rooting against President Trump and trying to get a scalp than it is about national security. So keep going with it. Keep going with it, because this is the failed stuff that didn't work for you before. Dr. Meink, I want to draw your attention, because we have a president now that will take decisive action. Clearly, the announcement of NGAD, moving forward with NGAD, is a real positive. Just so happens that the F-47 will be built by Boeing in St. Louis, which is a big win, but I think it's a big win for the country to move forward. How do you see our strategic, Senator, the chairman and I wrote an op-ed last year about doubling down really on our air superiority. It's a real important thing for us to do strategically. How do you think where do we stand right now? How important was that decision in your mind?
I think it was very, very important, Senator. And again, thank you for the one-on-ones we got to do. I appreciate the time. So I think the Department of the Air Force, air superiority, global strike, all the command and control, ISR, all the systems that the department is responsible for are becoming increasingly important, particularly in a China fight when it's such a high threat environment. You know, the 6th generation capability that NGADs will bring, as well as the B-21 and other systems, the long range munitions that we're developing. All those are going to be extremely important, and probably more so almost than probably since World War II with respect to the importance of air superiority and aircraft in general, Senator. So I think it's a very important decision.
One other thing that is just worth mentioning, I know you've been asked a couple questions about this from some other senators on the committee, but we have an Air Force Reserve fighter wing, the 442nd, that the A-10 is going away, so these follow-on missions and the critical personnel that, you know, are highly trained, and if there's not a sort of a follow-on mission, you lose that expertise, and it's really, really hard to get it back. And so there's been a lot of discussions that I look forward to talking with you and others about. The F-15EX seems to make a lot of sense there. But Dr. Meink, I also want to ask you, you have a pretty unique perspective, having served as the Deputy Director of NRO and been responsible for procurement with commercial space capabilities. And, you know, confirmed, you'll have responsibility for managing the kind of the other side of that collaborative partnership from the Space Force, the Space Force side. How do you view the role of commercial space imagery providers. And I say this, NGA West is in St. Louis, a huge asset and critical to our national security. How do you view that, given your role, previous role?
So I think commercial space in general is going to play a continuing, a bigger and bigger part in what we do, both from a commercial space and then also from national security. Imaging services are a big part of that. We've made a lot of advances in my current job. We've dramatically expanded the number of commercial providers. It's been interesting, right? Operating in that highly dynamic VC commercial space. We've learned some lessons, but I think we've come out of it stronger, and I expect to and hope to, if confirmed, take those lessons that I've learned working that in the NRO to the department.
And I guess for whoever, I've just got one question left, so whoever wants to jump in, and Dr. Meink, I feel like I've been dominating the questions with you. We've heard a lot about procurement reform and being more nimble. You've probably been asked, and I was in and out of this hearing about this before, but what are, if there were two things that we could do better to do that, what would it be?
Senator, I'll take the question. I think, first of all, I think we need to really examine very closely what are the regulatory burdens that we place on businesses that want to do business with the federal government. I think we need to be a dependable and reliable customer, because competition is the greatest incentive structure that we can have for our industry. And if we, there's that famous spaghetti chart out there that talks about post-Last Supper in the late 90s, the defense industrial base went from 51 primes to 5 primes, which really puts, and our prime contractors deliver tremendous capability. But I do think we deprive ourselves of the benefits of competition, and so it would be my priority, if confirmed as the Undersecretary, to examine where are those opportunities that we could remove the barriers to entry for both new venture-backed or private capital-backed companies, or to help companies that are already providing value, that are struggling to get access to the Pentagon, to give them greater access, because I think that will just really help us to identify and accelerate capability to the warfighter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Schmidt. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment on some of the comments that my colleague from Missouri made about the signal chat chain. Talking about war plans. Well, I have planned and conducted strikes off of aircraft carriers, multiple strikes, into harm's way over Iraq and Kuwait. And I would agree with the senator from Missouri, this is not an entire war plan. What this is an operational plan for very risky combat operations off of an aircraft carrier. And it's not all the information, but the most critical information that we have in our government are things like launch time off of a platform, in this case of an aircraft carrier, type of airplane, F-18s, MQ-9s, weapons like Tomahawks, time on target. It is very critical information. Somebody could argue that the piece of paper it came off of, the signal chat, it did not say secret or top secret. When you have pilots that are about to go feet dry over a foreign nation within an hour or 2 hours, and that information is being shared on a non-secure system, it puts those pilots at great risk. I agree, it is not all the information, but some of the most critical information that you would not want to be released is what was in that signal chain. So where I do agree with some of what you said with regards to an entire plan, sure. But the most critical pieces were shared publicly on an unsecure system by the Secretary of Defense. So with that, I've got some other questions about maritime industry and the Ships for America Act, which is my legislation with Senator Young of Indiana. So Mr. Duffy and Mr. Michael, one issue I've been focused on for a long time is the state of our maritime industry. Transcom relies on U.S. flag vessels and American mariners to provide strategic sea lift, and right now we don't have enough vessels or mariners to support sustained operations overseas. It's a national security issue for us. We also have a hollowed-out shipyard industrial base in the United States, and the only ocean-going ships we build in the United States now are Navy vessels, and that means constrained supply chains and increased costs for the Navy. These are all really pressing issues for our national security. So, Mr. Duffy first, and then Mr. Michael, what steps would you take to ensure that our cast and forged industrial shipbuilding base, from forging to supply chains and production, are ready for competition, crisis, and conflict?
Senator, thank you for your concern about this very important issue. I had a chance to read the GAO's testimony this week with respect to shipbuilding, and one of the major concerns that sort of was revealing to me in reviewing that was that since 2003, we have not increased the number of ships in our Navy, which is really puts us at a disadvantage when maritime supremacy is absolutely critical in terms of deterring our adversary and preventing future conflict. My understanding of the challenges in the shipbuilding industrial base include workforce and supply chain. If I'm confirmed into the role, it would be absolutely a priority for me to work with this committee and with you, and thank you for your leadership on the ships legislation, because I think where we've seen success in the defense industry is where we can leverage capability in the commercial industry, and I think that's one of the proposals of your legislation is how do we enhance both defense and commercial shipbuilding within the United States.
And then, Mr. Michael, would you agree that there are lessons that we can learn from the private sector when it comes to shipbuilding best practices?
There are a lot of lessons learned. I think the most sophisticated manufacturers today have very sort of dashboard-like understanding of where their supply chains are. Every supplier that they're required to build something so that they can eliminate bottlenecks. They could do just-in-time ordering. They know what's backlogged, so they can start on other processes while they wait for the parts that are in short supply to come in. AI can help with that and look through and down the supply chain across countries and figure out where the materials are that we need and schedule labor to be efficient on that. And that's done very effectively in lots of industries today, that we should be borrowing that technology or buying it or building it ourselves to do that in these industries, given the amount of money we spend.
And do you think having a vibrant commercial maritime industry is going to help us build Navy ships?
I think you can. I think the ancillary technologies that are built to manage supply chains and manufacturing and labor can be used to do the same thing in the military.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michael, have you read my forged act?
Twice.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Sullivan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Michael, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Saying. I scored some points there. Good work. I want to thank all of you, all four of you, your willingness to serve our country. Some of you have been doing that most of your career, so it's a good panel, and I appreciate everybody's service and your family's service too. Families mean a lot in these kind of jobs, so to your family members here as well, I want to thank all of you. Dr. Meink, I have shown you this slide here, and Mr. Duffy as well.
Let's put it in the record without objection.
Mr. Chairman. My part of the world, in Alaska, the AOR, that's, Arctic, Northern Pacific, we're getting a lot of action in our neck of the woods with Russian Bear bomber incursions into our AIDAs, Russian Navy vessels, task force into our EEZ. I just got a report harassing our fishermen just last month again. Joint Russian-Chinese strategic bomber task force into our AIDAs, which has never happened in the history of our country, with armed MiG fighters, and joint Russian-Chinese naval task force. So the lower 48 press doesn't cover this a lot, but it is a lot of action in the great state of Alaska. We're on the front lines of great power competition. And so I want to ask a few questions on that. Dr. Meink, we also have over 100 fifth-generation fighters. And F-16s, and our young men and women who go do these intercept missions all the time. These are tough missions. I was really glad to hear that you've done these missions as a tanker navigator, flew intercept missions against the Russians in the Alaska AIDAs, so thank you for that service. But here's my question. We need more tankers. There's no doubt about it. It's obvious. The Air Force has been telling me literally for 10 years that we need more tankers. It went from KC-46s, yeah, we're going to put them up there, to well, now we're going to put them all, not OCONUS, but CONUS. I don't think that makes any sense, but that was the decision. Then they said, but we know we need more tankers in Alaska, so we're going to move KC-135s from Kadena to Alaska. Then they rope-a-dope that one. That was General C.Q. Brown when he was Chief of Staff. That was previous Chiefs of Staff of the Air Force. So finally, I wrote a rather forceful letter to Secretary Kendall saying, hey, it's been about 10 years since you guys committed to tankers in my state, which we all know we need, right? Just go do one of those. I mean, you know, these guys go intercept Russian bear bombers. They got to tank 4 to 5 times just to get there. Really tough missions that our young men and women do a great job at. So the Secretary Kendall in the fall wrote and said to me, yes, Senator, the 4 KC-135s are coming. We had one, and then I heard, I was just home over the weekend with some folks saying actually they moved that one back. So can I get your 110% commitment? These 4 KC-135s are coming to Eielson. Our Air Force needs them. It's been 10 years since the Air Force committed to me on this. I'm getting a little impatient, as you can tell, but this isn't a hard call. Everybody and their mother knows that we need more tankers up in Alaska. Given the action, given if we have to surge forces from the lower 48 to Indo-PACOM, they're all going to fly over Alaska anyways. So can I get your commitment on that? No bobbing, weaving, no, just tell me yes.
So, Senator, if Secretary Kendall committed to moving 4 tankers up there,
and everybody for 10 years they've been committing,
then I will work to follow through on that, Senator.
Oh, that's a yes.
Yeah, that's a yes, Senator.
Great, thank you, Mr. Duffy. I want to just talk to you and Dr. Meink very quickly, and we can do it in more detail. But the Indo-PACOM commander, the NORTHCOM commander, given this action. NORTHCOM commander was here just last week, or I'm sorry, 3 weeks ago, in testimony saying this is going to only increase. And we need the infrastructure to deal with it. As I just mentioned, our great airmen have to fly 1,000 miles just to get to the AIDAs, just to intercept. So they have suggested, the NORTHCOM commander, more infrastructure at Dead Horse in Alaska, Galena, and very importantly, ADAC, and an Air Force hangar with regard to tankers. Can I get your commitment to work with me, both of you, on those infrastructure projects that the NORTHCOM and Indo-PACOM commander have both testified in the last month that they need?
Will give me a chance to get to Alaska, Senator? I will commit. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we know you're coming to Alaska.
Yes,
Dr. Meink?
Thank you.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Meink, congratulations on your nomination to serve as the Secretary of Air Force. And just want to say I was happy we had a chance to meet at length in my office and learn about a number of your priorities going forward. As you know, Selfridge Air National Guard Base in Michigan was selected as the home of a dozen new KC-46 tankers, to follow up on Senator Sullivan's conversation. And I certainly am grateful, as you mentioned in the office, your commitment to honor that decision to place those KC-46s in Michigan. And I look forward to officially welcoming you to visit Selfridge so you can see firsthand the incredible facility that is there. Similar to Senator Slotkin, who I know raised this issue with you earlier, I also remain committed to securing a future fighter mission for Selfridge, which is set to lose, as we talked about, its A-10 squadron in fiscal year 27. During our meeting, we discussed the Air Force's fighter force structure and prioritizing the recapitalization of combat-coded fighter squadrons. As you know, without recapitalization, the DoD risks losing hundreds of skilled service members
at a time when we are already short over 1,000 fighter pilots and over 4,500 maintainers. Of the 25 Air National Guard fighter squadrons in existence today, 15 do not have a recapitalization plan. And being from a National Guard state, Air National Guard state, that concerns me a great deal. And so my question for you, sir, is how can we ensure we are taking full advantage of the expertise of our current National Guard aviators and the crews that they have to address this personnel shortfall that the Air Force has?
Again, Senator, I thank you for the question, but also thank you for the opportunity to sit down and talk with you a bit. So, yeah, as I stated in the office, we, for sure, at KC, the 46 tanker, we will commit to that. In discussion, questions from Senator Slotkin, one of the things I will be looking at across the board is the procurement plan of fighters to meet the overall requirements that the department has been given, and what are the resources to get to the right numbers of aircraft as we build out the F-35s and then maintaining the fourth generation fighters, and then moving on into the NGADS program, making sure we have the right numbers of platforms, and then look at where we're going to put those platforms. And Senator, if confirmed, I promise to work directly with you on where we think we're going to land and have that discussion for sure.
Great. We also discussed in that office meeting how collaborative combat aircraft and other similar warfighting autonomous capabilities can be utilized and integrated alongside the KC-46s for both improved command and control. These autonomous aircraft will be, as you know, crucial in the Indo-Pacific, given their relative low cost and the versatile capabilities, as well as high numbers to be able to produce at scale. So my question for you, sir, is can you share your plans to prioritize and improve the acquisition process for autonomous capabilities to improve force mix of integrated Air Force platforms as well as weapon systems? And clearly the acquisition process needs to be a whole lot quicker, a whole lot more efficient. I'd love to hear your plans to make that happen.
I can talk about improving acquisition rate of innovation for all day long. I think the key is have the right people running the programs, have the right set of requirements, give the right authorities to the program managers, and then support them through the acquisition. So I've done that throughout my life with significant success, and I will continue to do so. With respect to specific acceleration of the different unmanned systems, CCAs, and other follow-on systems, I haven't been given the detailed, it's part of the larger NGAD, CCA, the larger enterprise solution that the department's been working on. I haven't gotten the detailed briefing on all that, but that will be a focus. It's a combination of not just the manned platforms, but it's the CCA, and I believe there's likely other platforms that'll be required, other unmanned platforms that will be required. And that's going to have to be a focus, because that's what that integration of those different type of platforms with ISR and other capabilities is what's going to be required to deter any aggressor in PACOM and any place else, and if we need to, right? We're going to have to make sure we get that right.
Thank you, Dr. Meink. I look forward to working with you on that issue and the others that we discussed in my office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Peters. There is a vote on, I'm the only questioner remaining in the first round. Let me go quickly. Mr. Duffy, thank you for mentioning the Forged Act on multiple occasions. With regard to things like other transaction agreements and middle-tier acquisition, you can go ahead with that now without the enactment of additional legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And if confirmed, I would look to find ways in advance of any additional legislation reforming the acquisition to ensure that the department is maximizing the use of the flexibilities that Congress has already provided.
That's good, and we need to do that, and we are going to work with you on that. Mr. Michael, let me ask about Defense Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research, or DEPSCOR. How can we build up innovation across the heartland not just in Silicon Valley and Massachusetts?
I think there's a lot of ways. I think the SBIR programs, I think the way we get our supply chains unlinked from our adversaries, those kinds of technologies or products, if you will, that we could do that are perfectly made for more manufacturing style capabilities than software writing. And I think the lots of good universities in the center of the country that have lots of manufacturing capability training programs, and there's lots of, frankly, plants there that exist that maybe not being used, that would be used to do component building and so on. So I think that plus focus on universities outside of the Ivy Leagues and the coasts. There's lots of universities in Indiana and in Chicago, in Illinois. Mississippi, perhaps, Alabama, that are doing great things. And I think if they specialize in certain subject matter areas, that we get a lot of productivity out of that part of the
Very good. And then I'll end with Mr. Bass. You have experience in the Department of Veterans Affairs. Based on your experiences there, what additional steps should we take at the DoD to improve retention and recruitment of civilian healthcare personnel?
Thank you, Chairman. Recruiting and retaining highly qualified staff has to be a priority. We are in direct competition with the civilian sector for these critical skills and these specialists.
It's a problem.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, it's a problem, and it's difficult to compete. We need to take a look at Title 38 authorities to see if we can use that to strategically recruit specialists. We need to take a look at pay and compensation packages. We should look at training opportunities to ensure that we recruit and retain these folks. And we need to make sure we develop pipelines, recruiting pipelines from prominent universities in Mississippi, and to make sure that we have a necessary force to carry out our medical mission.
Rhode Island, not so much.
Sir, I can't comment on that.
Senator Reed, we've got a vote on.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm fine.
Okay. Well,
thank you very much, Mr.
With
Chairman.
that, I'd like to thank our witnesses. Very good hearing. For the information of members, question for the record will be due to the committee within 2 business days at the conclusion of this hearing. And with that, and with the thanks of the committee, we are adjourned.